Thanks everybody for joining today. The time is your probably most valuable resource, and there's a million other things you could be doing right now other than sitting on this webinar here with us. So just to kind of kick us off, I really want to say I appreciate you being here, and I'm excited for some of the content that we're going to share here today. So, the webinar today is all going to be about creating your digital marketing strategy. To get us rolling, I wonder if this chat is working, but I'm going to do a few things for us here. First, if you don't already have my email, I'm going to drop that in the chat. And then I'm going to drop a link to my calendar as well. That way, if you want to call a meeting or anything, it's very easy to select a time from there. And then also what I would like you to do at this point is open up your email. Just open up a blank email and you're going to send it to me. So if you want to copy my email address in there. And as we go through all the content today, you're going to have questions, I'm sure, things that you want to unpack a little bit. For today, I've timed this quite a few times. We should land right around the 50-minute mark. Hopefully that gives us about 10 minutes for questions. So feel free to jot questions down in the Q&A. If you have any questions, we'll try to get to them as best we can. If we can't, I gave you this little email template in the chat, so that way you can kind of just drop a quick note that says, hey, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this topic. We have certainly quite a few people with different businesses, different audiences. So the content today is going to be more generalized, and then we can dive into some specifics as well. But that's just going to be a good way to get a hold of me. And if you want to ask any questions afterwards or follow up, certainly happy to do so. A little bit about me. So in preparing for today, it was very funny. So with 12 years experience, actually my first marketing gig or job was so far back that it was not digital at all. At that time, Facebook only existed to see if somebody was single or not, and there was no ads or political news, right? It was just something that was just on the cusp of that. So to talk about digital marketing today is certainly very fun for me because it's been very much like a passion for me for the past 5-6 years or so, and something that I'm really excited about. Obviously, that's why I love creating content all around it. The other person on today's call is Cassidy, who's one of our team members here, and I'll let her give a quick introduction as well.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for joining. My name is Cassidy, and I'm the SEO lead. So I help our clients build their digital presence online, and I'll kind of be moderating today. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And back to you, Matt.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. And so to kind of get into the meat of, why we're here today, which is basically just saying that, in the past few years, things have changed dramatically. I'm sure you guys have all heard that we're living in the new normal, and that's certainly what I believe as well. While in-person events are making a comeback, and some people do prefer in-person events as well, the data is very clear that today's B2B customer is online. They're searching online. They're doing their research online. And oftentimes they're making a lot of their buying decision online without the need or the help of anybody on your team. So that's why it's so important for us to think about the online content that we have, the online content we should have, as well as taking a look at our competitors to see what their content looks like as well. Especially when we think about our lead generation efforts, what we want to be considerate of is that by the time somebody actually reaches out to us and converts to become a lead, think about how much research they've already done. And so what we're going to try to talk about today is all the people who did not convert. So all those leads that did, or all those visitors who came to your website and bounced, who left. And that's what we're going to talk about is ways that we can optimize increasing our conversion rate, increasing our qualified leads, and trying to take advantage of some easy marketing tactics that could make a big improvement for us. So when we think about today's customer, right, those stats were pretty compelling, I'm sure. And then as we think about who they are and where they are, most of them are probably working from home. Just like I am, just like I'm sure a lot of you are as well. And so I want us to think about, this online shopper is not just going to go buy their new iPhone 14 from apple.com and then come to your website and forgive its mistakes or think about, it's like, oh, okay, well, I was a consumer at that point and now I'm in my B2B world now. So now that I've punched into my job, right, I'm willing to accept less as a shopper, right? We need to think about the same experiences that they're used to with consumer brands. They're going to be expecting that from our B2B brands. If not now, They certainly will be soon. So I'd say not a matter of if, but when. And so we want to think about, what does that transition look like from our digital experiences? These seem very basic, but I know a lot of companies still don't have the mechanisms in place to be able to share this with their customers, right? Can you order online? Can we see what kind of inventory we have? What about your production process and how the process is coming along, right? I think like Domino's coined that with the pizza tracker. And now we start trying to expect that in other parts of our life, right? FedEx consistently gives us updates on where our products are. And so what we want to think about is what can we do to try to move the needle and try to become a little bit better about this as well. Moving on here, what we want to think about is the content that we can create and the experience that we can create to make that very compelling in terms of, what we can offer. If we look back at this, when we think about the previous slides, right, how many customers are switching vendors, switching suppliers? My hypothesis is a lot of that is about setting expectations and communications. If somebody tries to order from you and they don't know what happens once they either pay the invoice or click the buy button, that's not a great experience. Or think about if your customer is at a trade show and they're talking to peers of theirs and they are thinking about, well, what kind of support do they have? If they ask like, oh, well, where are your new products, right? And they say, oh, well, I can easily check that online, or I can text that person or my company and I can get an instant update, right? That's a very positive user experience. And if somebody sees that their provider is not offering that, it's going to start getting them to wonder and think, how come the person that I'm working with now doesn't offer that same ability? So we want to think about that customer experience, and then we want to think about the content that we can supply to help create that experience or better that experience as well. The power of content is that it is so scalable and that it helps educate our users. So if you have production delays, we can use content to help satisfy that, or at least set those expectations. The goal here is to create content where 1 + 1 = 3. And what I mean by that is that we want to create content that can serve multiple people all at the same time. The term evergreen, meaning that this content can last on forever and ever, and that it's compounding is that it's only increasing in value over time. To kind of like pull us from the presentation here for a second, I'll open up our Google Search Console. So this is Steel Croissant's website. This is our blog content. This is our performance. If we look at, this is when we obviously started our SEO efforts, and then everything is trending upward from here. So we are regularly producing blog content. But the value in the content that we are creating is that that same blog article that started getting no traffic down here and now is starting to get a lot of traffic down here, it's that same content that is serving a ton of people. And as Google sees that as valuable, I'll bring us back to the presentation, they're going to start serving that to more and more people in search engines. So that's where not only is this content timeless, right? It's going to be relevant. It just needs updates every year or so, but also it's going to continue to increase in value and increase in its ROI. When we send off this presentation later, that has tons of links and resources at the bottom. So if you want to unpack any of these a little bit further, hopefully there's some really great resources in here for you to look at. Now, what I want us to think about is also what have we done in the past that maybe didn't work? And I want us to try to forget about that, mostly because how much the world has changed in the past few years. What I want us to think about is, okay, well, if something did not work for us, why was that? Was it not the right time? Was it not the right audience? Did we not run the experiment long enough to really get enough data for it? So I want us to try to reset our expectations. We are just coming out of a once in a lifetime world-changing couple of years. And now I think I'm not saying we're out of it or that the world knows how to respond better, but what we have seen is now this fluctuation. And now we can start thinking about, okay, well, what's that marriage between in-person or online? And how do we want to try to reset what our brand's relationship is with our customers here going forward? A few years ago, if you told me that you could buy a $150,000 car online without ever test driving it, I would call you crazy. But now Tesla, right? They are sold out of their cars. These cars can cost, as you don't want the cheap one. They say 40,000, but really the version you want is probably like 60 or 70,000. This one right here, I think, is like 175,000. You can order it without having ever test driven it. And it's going to take you 6 months to a year before you receive it. But because of this experience and the way they communicate, it's easy for consumers to sign up for it, right? So that's where I want us to think about, who are we, and where are things going? So to kind of get us rolling here, let's see if this little tool works for us. I want us to try to self-select, who we are to help me like better understand who's, I guess, in the room, in the Zoom room, who's on the webinar today. If this little poll popped up, I want us to kind of take a look at and try to figure out, who, like, where would you sit? I understand these are very broad strokes here, but if you guys kind of like take a second, figure out which group we're in, and then I'll kind of help try to cater a little bit of this to it as well. I'm so happy that this poll works. I was not too sure, but I see a few answers coming in, so awesome. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. That is super helpful. So I'll make sure that we kind of tailor that. Certainly a big cluster in one of those groups as well. So, some common things when we talk about that Tesla model, right? It's easy to look at Tesla, Apple, Nike, think about those are the industry leaders. And if we're ever doing a branding exercise, we do not allow any of our clients to use those as examples. So I understand I'm kind of cheating the system here, but I'm sure some of these things sound and look familiar, right? I don't sell direct. I can't sell direct. I sell through distributors. This is where I want us to start thinking about, well, what is that going to look like in 5 to 10 years from now? I am sure some products from some of the brands represented today, they're very technical. They require a salesperson. Maybe they're too large to ship, right? There's a lot of factors that come into B2B products and how we sell products. But I want us to think about what that experience may look like, right? As the next Gen Z or whatever letter comes after that, as they start entering the market, as they become buyers and have influence over this buying process, I want us to think about how we are going to cater and adjust to them, right? What does our experience look like now? And how are we going to get to e-commerce? And what will that process look like? A really good example of if this sounds scary of like, well, I don't want to get in the middle of our distributors. I think we can look at the food and beverage industry as a great example. This is where I feel like I'm not old, but like the experience is what's showing me is, once digital started becoming a thing in my career, food and beverage was a natural path for me to then move into in the marketing world, mostly because they needed branding, they needed a website, they needed packaging, they needed all this collateral. So those are the type of clients I started working with early in my career. And with that, they were terrified about getting on the wrong side of Walmart, Whole Foods, Target. They're like, we sell so much through these channels, through these distributors. What happens if we start selling direct? What happens if we start selling on our website? What happens if we start selling on Amazon, right? These were all very scary things because at that time, they only had one channel to the grocery stores, right? And then wholesale to them, and then they would sell their products. But what we saw over the last 10 years, if we unpack that a little bit more, right? These brands are selling direct. They are selling through distributors, and the power of their brand is pulling customers through. The where to buy on a lot of these food and beverage things are some of their most valuable assets because sometimes people don't want to order their snack bars or their protein drinks online. They would rather go pick them up because either they prefer that or they need them in a pinch. And so we can look at the power of branding can help propel both sides of that equation. So maybe distributors stay in the mix for the next 5, 10, 20 years or for forever, but that doesn't mean that we can't sell direct and that the power of our brand can help accelerate that and really impact and positively impact their brand as well. So for today, to kind of walk through what we're going to talk about. First, developing our strategy, executing it, and reviewing our performance. And then in the end, we've got some really fun stuff to share, our favorite tools, what to be on your radar, and what's coming up next. So for today, we'll talk through our 4 steps in creating a digital marketing strategy: our discovery, strategy development, execution, and review. And we will not cover a few things that are more traditional marketing, but that does not mean that they are not important. In-store, environmental, sponsorship is making a huge comeback as people are looking to really connect one-to-one with brands as well. guerrilla marketing is still a great aspect of what should be in your mix. So yeah, we certainly could have future webinars on these in the future. My email's right there if you want to unpack those a little bit more. And again, we can maybe cover those at another time, but just to set expectations for today. Okay, so to get into the meat of our presentation today. So when it comes to marketing strategy, just to unpack those terms a little bit more, this is how I see it, right? I see strategy as understanding the competitive landscape with a very realistic lens of who we are, what we offer, and who our competitors are and what that all entails. Then really understanding our target market. And then understanding our resources and constraints, right? That could be budgetary restraints, right? We're only able to invest this much. This could be team constraints, right? We only have this many people in our department and thus need to rely on outside sources, right? That's all going to be a huge part of it. Then creating our goals, creating a prioritization of what's best between short and long term, right? That's kind of how I see strategy, is just making sure that we understand the landscape, who we're going after, how we're going to go after them, and essentially, what constraints we have on ourselves. And then marketing, I see that as putting ourselves in the best position to win, because who knows when our customers are going to make a decision. And so it's up to us as marketers to make sure that we are always top of mind with them. And we'll talk through what that looks like in pretty great detail here in a few. So I think it's always important when thinking about your marketing strategy, what is the overarching strategy we're looking at? Is it growth, right? Are we trying to find new opportunities? Are we trying to steal market share from others? Is it retention and renewing these accounts and staying in our lane and making sure that we don't churn, that we don't lose any customers to our existing? Or is it account depth? Do we have any new products or services that we're looking to employ? Is there a way we can increase our footprint with our existing customers as well? All of these are very important, but for today, we will simply focus on growth. So we're going to focus mostly on how do we increase our month-over-month leads, how do we increase the quality of our leads, and how can we do that through digital content that, again, is scalable, right? Meaning that it can serve multiple people at the same time. I'd say easy promotion here, because one thing that every brand struggles with, we do as well, is promotion, right? So staying active on social media. If you're creating high quality content, that eliminates a post right there, and you can post it multiple times. So whoever is managing your social media, by creating high quality content, this just makes their job a little bit easier, right? Now they have something easy to share versus like a Taco Tuesday meme or something like that. The searchability of this high quality content, right? Over time, more and more people will be able to discover it online. And that's when we start thinking about growth, about people who don't know about us, who start finding our products and solutions, and then start moving them through that funnel. And the last part of that is moving users through our funnel. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. So on to discovery. This is kind of the first step in that process, right? Figuring out who is our audience and how we're going to connect with them. So here are the mechanisms that we typically use to help uncover some of this. SWOT analysis. I don't anticipate that this is a new term for you. However, it is a great exercise to run within the next couple of weeks or months, mostly because of how fast things are changing. When I think about weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, that's where I'm thinking about that customer experience, online ordering, consistent updates, how easy it is for them to reach out to us, right? Those, depending upon what our competitors are doing, that could be an opportunity because nobody else is doing it at this point, or that could be a threat or a weakness because maybe somebody else is. This is a very critical step in the process to make sure that we are really being honest with ourselves on who we are, what we're providing, and then how do we want to maybe shift that to be a little bit more modern brand in this next year. For voice of customer research, this is one of the most valuable tools out there. These are projects that we run regularly, and I wish they were easier, but it's hard work, but it is invaluable resources. The way I like to think about voice of customer research and how to conduct that, right? We want to talk to people inside the company, right? The internal team. We want to talk to our super fans, our evangelists, our customers that absolutely love us and would never go anywhere else. We want to talk to customers that we didn't win. That's often when it's easier to employ a third party to conduct this research, because if you lost a bid, they may not want to talk to you about why. So that's why it's easier to have a research team lead that charge. And then we want to talk to prospects as well. How do they find us? What are they evaluating? What is their buying criteria? This is one of the most valuable tools that we can utilize here. And the way I like to think about it is branding. They often say it's not what you say about yourself, it's what your customers say about you, right? It's your reputation. And that's what voice of customer helps unlock for us. The way we advance that is then by thinking about, well, this is what we're saying about us. Here's what customers think about us. And are those aligned or are those separate? Because if they are not aligned, then clearly we are missing the mark on our messaging, because we're telling everybody that we're red and they all think we're blue. We need to figure out why that is. And maybe it's our product, maybe it's our messaging. That's where this research is very valuable in seeing if our messaging and the customer expectations are aligned. Buyer personas and types of customers. Now, I don't think these are new terms for you, but I want to emphasize the importance of these. Our buyer personas, thinking about who is our target audience, and really drilling down into the specifics of their daily life, or a life in the day, or a day in the life, sorry. And then we want to start thinking about our types of customers, right? This is an area that is very, very, it's not very common and popular in this strategy or in these discussions, but it is so important for us, because what I want to start thinking about with us is who are these different types of customers, right? There's usually the economic buyer. They manage the budget. There's the technical user, the operations. They're going to be implementing this. There's the end user who's actually going to be using your service. And then we have the coach, the person who is advancing this entire discussion, the reason why this RFP, this proposal, this new project is around. If we can really pinpoint who these people are, we can start thinking about what each person needs to hear in order to get there. And this customer journey map is the exercise that we conduct in order to start thinking about, okay, well, who are the types of customers? What do they need to hear at each stage in that buyer journey? And then market infrastructure, thinking about how does our industry work? How will it evolve? And how can we leverage that and take advantage of it? So for the marketing funnel, I don't think this should be new to anybody, right? But it's awareness, consideration, decision. It's how people experience a problem, think about it, and then start finding a vendor. Now, this is a customer journey map. This is just an example pulled online. And what I want us to look at is kind of like, this is an exercise. We are going through it at the moment internally. We do this for our clients regularly, but it's so important to think about the activities that they conduct, right? How do they research? How do they experience a problem? What are their goals at that stage, right? You may not be thinking about price in the very beginning, or maybe you are, right? Depending upon the product you offer, depending upon how hard that need is, right? They may move right past that. And then we can start thinking about the experience, both not only from becoming a customer, but then afterwards into loyalty and advocacy. What would make them recommend you as a friend? This is a phenomenal exercise to help figure out and look at that process to see where are you strong and where are you weak. And then the last one is our market infrastructure. This is one of the most valuable tools and graphics to think about in terms of how does our industry work. Now, what I want us to think about is this like intentional break. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but the intentional break between each step. And what I want us to think about is each of these, like the further you get away from your company, your website, your branding, right? We have the most control over that. And then as we go through each of these layers, there's an opportunity to either gain alignment or lose it, right? That picture of who we are can either get more fuzzy or it can become more clear. And that's where our messaging and that alignment I mentioned, that's where it becomes so important. So after us becomes our partners, right? These could be distributors, something to that regard. This is somebody who really has an impact on how our products are marketed, are sold, and are really talked about at the ground level. So this is why it's very important for us to consider who our partners are and the collateral that we're creating for them to help educate them. The next is influencers. And if you think influencers don't exist in your industry, they certainly do. They're probably just small and really getting started. But influencers are kind of taking over because everybody is trying to become a subject matter expert in a certain field. And that could be highly technical. That could be a big YouTube personality. It really mixes depending upon your industry. But again, it's the same thing. Customers are going to trust people who aren't the brand selling it to them. They're going to look for third-party validation. And that's where influencers play a huge role in how your brand is perceived. Because if they say something about your brand that you do not like, you do not have control over that. That's their review. That's their interpretation of who you are. And then marketing. The reason why this is further down in the list, right? Because it is a little bit detached from our company, because if you think about SEO, when somebody search for a solution, right, your competitors could be bidding on your keywords. So then maybe they show up, right? There's competition. When you think about social media, your social media post is right next to a picture of somebody's cat, or it's a news article, or it's your competitor. It's a very busy space, right? At a trade show, you're not the only person there. So they're going to be walking from booth to booth to booth. So that's where you need to think about, okay, well, how can we create a message that really cuts through the noise that gets to our customer? And that's at that bottom part of this piece, is that target audience, right? That's who they are. So we need to think about, how can we leverage this entire infrastructure to be on our side? And the easy secret to this is creating very, very clear content. So one of the first steps in this discovery process is to conduct an audit. It's to think about, how did we perform on these digital channels? And we should unpack these as much as we can. We have our website, right? How did that perform for us in this last year? We have search engines. How, when somebody landed on our site, right? How was our keyword ranking? How well, what's our visibility like? How easy was it for people to find us? And when we think about off page, right, we think about guest posts, PR, news articles. We want to think about, okay, well, how did we leverage those, or how could we, right? What would getting written up in Forbes or whatever industry publication is relevant to your audience, how would that impact us? And were we even thinking or planning for that? You know, social media is a huge animal. There are so many channels. And so that's where having a good strategy of understanding who our audience is, where they're spending time, that's going to be a big piece for us. We kind of go through the rest of these, where podcasts, and we'll kind of click through these as well. What I want us to think about is that, you know, just because we are not on a channel now doesn't mean we can't be in the future. And just because we do not, maybe we aren't set up to publish a podcast, that does not mean that we can't have a podcast strategy. We could still be a guest on these. We could still have ads that run on these. Anywhere that our audience is spending time, it makes sense for us to at least evaluate how we can play a role into that. So as we look through our audit, what I want us to think about is, what channels do we currently operate on? What channels do we want to operate on because our audience is spending time there? And then what are the KPIs, or the key performance indicators? What are they to determine if we've been successful or not? If we weren't on a channel at all, then mark it 0, right? Because we didn't have a presence there. But for the other ones, we want to start thinking about, which generated the most amount of qualified leads. Nothing is more frustrating than seeing you get a new lead and then looking at the comments and realizing it's either spam, not qualified, a waste of time, right? We want to think about qualified leads. Then we want to start thinking about, which channels move users through the funnel the quickest, right? Did they make a buying decision overnight? Did it take a week? Did it take a month? Is that the same across all of our channels, right? Do leads from social media take a lot more time than SEO, or vice versa? We want to start thinking about that deal velocity. How fast did somebody move through this? And then depending upon how much we invested into each channel, which generated the highest return? We should be thinking about these investments in both short, medium, and long term, and then analyze those. And then at the end of the year, like we are now, thinking about, okay, well, what made the biggest difference? And then which ones did we put the most effort into? And did those yield the biggest results? Last part of that is thinking about our content. Was there any content that we created that really stood out, that customers love, that's getting the most traffic, that's getting the most engagement? We really want to analyze what performed the best, what performed the worst, and then start thinking about, okay, well, how can we replicate that system? Now, when we think about creating this content, right, and especially thinking about maybe some of the constraints or the environments that your B2B brand is in at the moment, we want to start thinking about, well, we don't always need to create content for the end user, right? We could make high quality content for our distributors or our partners, right? The better and more clear our content is, and I'm talking design, does it look good, right? Is it easy to see the hierarchy of what's being presented? How well are our sales sheets, our data sheets, our spec sheets, our technical briefs, how well are those designed, and are they clear so that if a distributor is looking for that, is that easy to find on our website? And when they download it, is it easy for them to understand and communicate that to the end user? that same content is probably valuable to that end user as well. And same with the influencer. When I mentioned earlier about if they give us a bad review or if they use words that go against our brand or the grain, we want to think about, okay, well, why did they use those words? And then in the future, what can we equip them with? What can we arm them with? What can we coach them with to help say, okay, well, this is our brand. This is what we stand for. Here's what we offer, right? The more content we create, the easier it is for them to be able to understand who we are and then better recommend us. The other benefit of this content that I'm talking about is not only is it easy promotion, like I mentioned when it comes to social media, right? You're making your social media person's life a little bit easier because now they don't need to think of another post, but also from a sales perspective, as an agency, we certainly see this. And in general, you can imagine, right? It's so frustrating to follow up with customers and say, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? What's the update? What's the latest, right? That's not very compelling. And for the shopper or the customer, it's not a great experience. We don't want to be sold. We want to be, we want to take our time. We have our own things going on. Whatever you are trying to sell us is one puzzle piece in our entire work life, right? You contain one small piece of it. I have so much else going on, but by creating content that educates them about their industry, about where things are going, right? Creating stuff outside of pure sales content creates a natural follow-up. Did you see this latest? Did you see what's going on here? We just published a white paper on this. We created a case study on this. You should see the ROI on this other project we are working on. That makes it so much easier to follow up with people because now you have a reason to, other than just pinging their inbox or their cell phone. So now moving on to strategy development. So when we're thinking about this, what I want us to think about is first those personas, right? How do they move through that funnel? What's that awareness, that consideration, and that decision look like? And then who are the buyers? The person who's paying the check, the person who's going to implement it, the person who's going to use it. We want to think about all of those, and we want to create a spreadsheet very similar to what we see here on the right. And then what we want to start doing is filling that spreadsheet in with content that we already have. This is called a content gap analysis. And what it allows us to do is start building our strategy. It starts with creating a realistic view of what content do we have and what content is missing. Again, if you want to unpack these a little bit more, this is a really great articles about the content that belongs at each stage of the funnel, the purpose they serve, and how you can go about creating it as well. And then this one, I think at the bottom is strictly here all about video content. So then as we create this spreadsheet and we map out what that customer journey map looks like, the content that they need, their motivations and their goals at each stage, then we start thinking about all the content that is missing. Then what we want to start doing is planning what content do we create next. This is a great tool to start thinking about, well, what's a short-term goal? What's a long-term goal? And how easy is it to do this? What we want to look at is what content do we have that's performing the best? And is there anything we need to do to it? An example for us is one of our blog posts that is really powerful. It generates a lot of traffic and leads for us, is creating your 2022 SEO strategy. We need to update that post to say 2023. Simple things like that. Or maybe something has changed in the market, your product, whatever, right? Take our most valuable content, update it, and make sure that it's still staying relevant to all of our users who are accessing it and all the new ones who will find it. The next, we want to look at some of the content we have that doesn't exist online already. Again, this could be sales sheets, this could be marketing presentations. I'm not saying all of this can just go online for the public to see, but then let's think about it. What do we need to trim out of this so that it can be online, so that it can be searchable? And if, say, maybe it is sensitive, is that something that we could convert into an ebook or to a case study or a white paper, where in order to access this content, you need to convert and give us your email to become a lead? Then the next part of that is all the other content that we need to make, right? We need to start thinking about all that other content. And then we want to start prioritizing it based on how difficult it's going to be to create and the value it's going to create. As a good example, right? If you're making a white paper, that is so much more difficult than a blog post. So we need to think about who's involved, how difficult it's going to be. And then that's what helps us figure out what our short and long-term strategies are. And as we think about, creating these, we need to start thinking about our goals and our KPIs. This is a very old, timeless acronym. And so I don't expect this to be new to too many, but hopefully if it is, it can provide a lot of value. It's basically thinking about the goals that we create and the criteria that each of these need to be made. It needs to be a very clear and easy to understand goal. We need to know how we measure success and failure. We need to operate within the constraints. We need to make sure that it's relevant to our business objectives and where the company is going, and that we set a time parameter for when we're going to review and how we're going to decide if we continue this program, if we pivot, if we adjust, or if we abandon it. An easy way to think about some of these parts is through that marketing funnel. So that's the basic awareness, consideration, and decision. And an easy way to think about it is that top of funnel. Is it getting engagement? A good example is social media, right? The worst possible scenario that can happen is somebody sees your post, they scroll right past it and don't do anything. That means it wasn't relevant to them, or they didn't understand it. The next worst possible thing they could do is give it a like, because I mean, that's good. It's better than nothing. However, they just went right past it. And the algorithm, maybe it serves more of your content, maybe it serves your competitor content, or maybe it's industry content. It doesn't totally know what you liked about it. What we want to think about is what can really spark a new conversation. That's a share, that's a save, that's a follow, that's some way of them getting attached to our brand. And that middle of the funnel is, can we convert somebody from these other platforms that we are working on? That's guest posting, that's social media, that's email, that could be whatever. How can we get them onto our site? That's where we have the most control. That's where our brand shines the best, or should be shining the best. How good is our middle content to drive users to us to really start thinking about us as a provider? And then that bottom of funnel KPI we want us to start thinking about is, how many leads did we close? How fast did that happen? How long was the sales cycle? And is there opportunities for optimization? And then again, this is something that we run and consider across all of our channels so that we can start measuring what's generating the best return based off of the level of effort and investment that we're putting into it. And the time to start thinking about these feedback mechanisms on how we're going to measure this, what does success look like, we need to do that now before we deploy any marketing. Because the more time that we spend collecting data, the less time we have to actually start reviewing it. So we want to start thinking about our marketing technology stack and what our workflow looks like, who's involved in the reviews, how we're going to streamline this. And then also, odds are, I know some companies operate on a rather lean marketing team and some have a full staff, but that doesn't mean that you're the only ones viewing it. So who else should we involve? How can we streamline the sharing of this data? So that way it's easy to have regular reviews and keep people kind of like, up to date on what we're working on versus just an end of quarter review as to where things are at. Again, any questions? I know that was a lot. So drop it in the Q&A if you have any questions. So now actually getting to work, the execution part of this, which is the most important thing, is creating a workflow. Now that is very tough because it's hard to imagine what all those steps are going to be. For us, our blog content workflow literally gets a new item on the checklist almost every week or every month. As we start thinking about our workflow, it started with, think of a topic, write it, publish it, easy. And then it was like, well, we should survey a bunch of topics. We should do some SEO research as to which is most valuable. And then we do that. Now our process literally has so many more steps. It's create a bunch of topics, do the keyword research, see where we can win, test the relevancy of the audience, write a brief, find examples, think about the word count, think about our SEO optimizations, review, write, put in images, review, optimize, publish, promote, right? And don't be afraid if your workflow gets more and more. It's actually a good thing if your workflow has more detailed steps, because now you can be more realistic with what do we, how long is this going to take, who's involved, and what are all the steps? The workflow is the secret. I wish that quote at the top was like me or somebody famous. It was a dentist. I was taking a call last week and that was a quote from him, but I absolutely love it because without a good project management and without a good workflow, your marketing can't move forward. So now thinking about how are we going to do this? We should not do this alone. Every department can benefit from our content. Sales, support, product, right? These are all parts of our company who can contribute to us, and they likely have some frustrations already. A great thing to do is to call a hands-on meeting and bring people in and say, hey, here's what we're working on. Here's where we're going. We are thinking about doing this. How can we serve you? How can marketing help you? That helps trying to get a little bit more buy-in and alignment, because now we're trying to make their job easier. If support is consistently fielding horrible emails about your production times or about the quality of your product, clearly something is wrong with marketing. We are setting the wrong expectations. So asking them, what are the most common questions you get? What's something that we do that isn't aligned with the customer expectations? This is good content we can create, and then it makes us more honest in front of the customers as well. And then thinking about who else can help. This is where our partners come into play and our influencers. Thinking about what do they serve, the content that they create, who is it for, and how can we support them? If they're going to do a review, a teardown, if they're going to expand on it, whatever it may be, if they're going to be creating content regardless, we should involve them in this process. If it's a distributor or a partner, what are the most common questions that customers have about our products? How can we help you get more educated on that? Or how do you describe our brand to them? Listen to them, hear what they have to say, and then now it gives us an opportunity to repackage that, not only in the messages, but the collateral we provide them. Maybe they don't want sales sheets. Maybe they want a video. We don't know these questions unless we ask them. Same with influencers. The easier we make their job, the easier it is for them to recommend us, and the more consistent and aligned their message can be with our message as well. Now on to our final step, which is we've executed, we're publishing, we're feeling great about it, and now we need to evaluate what's working or not. Again, we should have feedback mechanisms in place so that we're tracking how we're doing, and we're not necessarily reviewing it. Reviews are for month or quarters. Tracking is seeing how things are evolving and making small optimizations along the way. That doesn't mean that we can't review, though, like with these these check-ins as well. As an example, if SEO takes a while to see the fruits of its labor because Google, as their product search, it wants to protect us, the users who are searching, by only giving them high quality content. So it takes a while to build trust with them. But that doesn't mean that we can't test on how our blogs are doing. If we share it on email, on social, is it getting clicks? Is it getting an engagement? That will show if the topic is relevant or not. Now, that may not necessarily show the keyword research that was done, but we can still measure how it's doing compared to the others. These are all ways for us to think about and be creative. How can we evaluate the efforts? How can we do so in a way that doesn't take a lot of time? And instead, how can we make small optimizations along the way? We're getting close to the end here. And nice, I think our timing is running perfect. So this is a good recap of the whole process that we outline in this. And again, I'll be sharing these slides with you so you can be able to take these away and see and review the content in a little bit more detail. But here is what we have outlined on kind of all these steps. If there's any questions or anything, certainly we can take those as well. Now to talk a little bit more about how we do this and how we make our life easier, because our company and our agency, we do this all day. And now we are totally remote. Cassidy, I mentioned, is in Spain. I'm in Denver. She happens to work late, and I work and wake up really early. So like we have a lot of good times, but still it's hard because collaboration online and remote is so imperative to the success. Here are a bunch of tools that we use all day, every day that help us either work better or help us, our efforts perform better. Slack, that's an internal chat that we use all day, every day. Monday.com is our preferred project management software. We found when evaluating project management softwares that was the easiest to get started with the most upside of advanced functionality. ClickUp was one that we thought was a little bit too robust, and Trello and others just seems like they didn't have enough built in for it. Loom is a screen recording software. I use that every day to work with my team and with clients to show them what my screen looks like, what I'm thinking, and annotate my feedback. Sometimes it's hard to put all of your feedback into words, and so videos can do a very good job at expediting that and making sure there's alignment. Miro, we call that a mind mapping tool or a brainstorming tool. It's basically a very flexible platform that allows you to create, to draw, and to make a very complex situation and then get alignment from your team. They can collaborate, they can add to it, they can ask questions. It's a great tool to be able to collaborate when something doesn't fit inside the box of a Google Doc or a presentation. Webflow, that's the site that, or the platform we chose to build our websites on. We have some very exciting things coming with Webflow. They just unlocked, and we happen to be some of the advanced users on the platform. So we're given early access to memberships and logic. Logic, meaning that we can build unique circumstances based off of the user and their behavior. That is kind of going to be getting into artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that is a very exciting piece for us. Now into more on the website side of things. Hotjar, that is a tool on every website we publish, ours included. It essentially gives you screen recordings of how users are using your site, where they go, and you can follow that journey. So you can see if people are confused or if they bounced, why that happened, or if they did convert, how many pages they went through. Chipbot, if you've been to our website, you've seen me as a little video in the bottom corner. I cannot tell you how valuable that tool is for us and for our clients, and just having an escape mechanism so that everybody on the site always has the ability to reach out and ask a question. What's exciting about that, and we'll have a webinar on this later, is the ability to add video content to your site without the need of a developer or access to your site or to your CMS. So you can uniquely put video content on each page just without any technical expertise, just in their admin. And that can help people clear up confusion, that can showcase support, that can move people through the funnel, that can have a lead magnet activity to it. There's a lot of use cases here, and we usually recommend it for most sites as well. Google Search Console, that's the tool I showed you earlier. That was how we track our keyword performance and our SEO efforts. And we do all of those efforts, and a lot of our strategy and tactics are based in SEMrush. There are a lot of SEO tools out there, cheap, expensive. SEMrush has been around for a while. It is right in the middle in terms of pricing, and that's where all of our efforts are. We will probably have a deep dive on SEMrush itself just to showcase anybody who maybe is not looking to hire an agency but wants to get started on SEO. We'll be doing a breakdown of how to get started, how to set everything up correctly for you. So hang tight if you want to hear more about that. And then Grammarly, that has to be one of my favorite tools. Nothing looks worse than misspelling something in an email or a document or anything you send to a client or a customer. Grammarly is just a great tool that should be on your computer, your browser, email, everywhere. It just makes sure that your spelling is correct, your grammar is correct, your punctuation is right. And then the paid version has some really nice features as well to make sure that you're writing in the right voice, that you're sounding intelligent. It's really a lifesaver if you haven't used it already. Now, a couple of things we'll tease, and then we can hop to any questions as well. And this is kind of where the future is. And I'll try to touch on these very briefly, but it's our CRM. You know, I saw a lot, I'd say the majority of the responses looking at the poll, it's like little to no usage on your CRM. We've seen that a lot of people do not have any, do not use a CRM or do not utilize it to its full extent because it does not connect with their ERP. And I understand that that is a huge concern. And CRMs that often do are either custom or they're old school and they don't look great. I do want us to start thinking about a CRM because they are such a valuable tool for us. It's customer relationship management software. And what that makes sure that we can do is track our leads, see how things are going, and then it starts putting data behind those funnel KPIs that we mentioned. As you have a new customer come in, you can create a deal. And then once we have a deal for that customer, we can track if we won or lost, what the communication looked like, and how much time got in there. That's where we want to make sure that if we're not using that tool, we start thinking about how we can, because at some point, if you're on this call, right, your job description will evolve to where maybe you're not handling the lead activity anymore. And so we need to start thinking about, okay, well, if you were managing somebody who is, what do you want to see month over month leads? What do you want to see deals, right? We want to start thinking about how can we configure a CRM that really helps your business get better visibility into how things are performing. The next is YouTube. That's not a new thing, but YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. Google is number one, and Google owns YouTube, and Google is starting to show more video content. We need to make sure that if we don't have a YouTube account, we make one right away, and then we start thinking about what does our video content here in the future look like. And we have a few webinars coming up to talk through what your video content strategy should be. But in general, YouTube is the future. It's hard to know and predict what Instagram looks like, as that's in a tornado right now of confusion. Facebook is on the decline. Twitter is not necessarily relevant. TikTok, we will see where that goes. At the moment, it is crushing numbers in terms of users, time on site or time within the application, as well as ad spend at the moment. It is breaking all the milestones. So that is a platform I would certainly recommend exploring. But what I can tell you is that YouTube will be around for sure. We saw Clubhouse last year. And if you don't know what that is, my point exactly. Everyone thought it was going to be the next best thing, and then it died. And now it's like it exists, but not anywhere close to what people thought it was going to be. YouTube will certainly be around. Podcast is another one that are continuing to grow at a rapid rate because content is so hard to produce at a regular rate. Oftentimes you can marry your podcast strategy with your YouTube strategy, essentially create the same content recorded at the same time, and then just publish one with video onto YouTube and one without on podcasts. But again, there's ways to be involved in podcasts without necessarily being a producer of content. You can sponsor content. You can have ads. You could be a guest speaker. There's a lot of ways to be involved. QR codes, finally, they get the love and attention they deserve. Everybody knows how to use them now, because if you've gone out to eat in the last 2 years, you had to use that to scan a menu. We should think about ways that we can connect the in-person world to our digital presence. QR codes are that great bridge for us. And the last one is artificial intelligence and machine learning. The web is becoming a very dynamic place in terms of data that we collect and data that we can analyze and data we can act on, sometimes without the need of any human involvement. I put this Twitter post on here, which I thought was hilarious, which is, people using AI tools to write their content for them for their school papers. At the moment, we are currently using a similar tool to help author all of our blog content. We're using one that's, and it's just a test because who knows how it's going to perform. We're still using our regular blog content process of human writers, but we're testing the AI version to see what it is, because we created the brief. If a writer, it takes 4 to 8 hours. The AI tool took 30 minutes. Now we had to edit it to get it where it needs to be, but is that a valuable tool for us? How can we leverage some of this stuff, not just from a content perspective, but from a CRM and automation perspective? There's a lot of interesting things coming up, and it's not saying we need to deploy these right now, but it does make sense to see and monitor how could we, what are the options, and evaluate that here into the future. On the horizon, I'll drop in the chat right now. So our next webinar is going to be from Cassidy, who you guys met at the very beginning of the call, and it's going to be about search engine optimization. I'll drop that right now. Link to register. Again, I'll send you these slides, but it'll be in 2 weeks from today. Same time, same place, maybe a different link then. And then we have a bunch of topics that we are also considering and trying to gauge, your feedback to see which one would be the most valuable to you. These are all topics that we really love. It's kind of hard for us to whittle this down, and we only have about 5 more we're going to produce for the rest of the year. So any input you have on which one should rise to the top, we would love to see that. And 5 minutes over with still 5 minutes remaining. I just want to say I very much appreciate everyone's time and attention today. It means a lot for me that you guys showed up, but also it really shows how much you're vested in and care about your company, your brand, and where it's going to this next year. If there's anything we can do to support, I'm always happy to chat. You should hopefully have a link to my calendar and my email there. If you're taking notes, feel free to shoot off that email right away. But for now, I can kind of stop the overall presentation. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if you kind of got what you came here for today, feel free to call it a day. And we'll follow up over email with the slides and the recording.